small, all things wise and wonderful, the Lord God made them all. The cold wind in the winter, the pleasant summer sun, the ripe fruits in the garden, He made them every one. All things bright and beautiful, creatures great
Well, good morning. It is good morning. Hope you enjoyed your Thanksgiving day. We had, I don't know, it was close to 30. We lost count, but it was a big crowd in our house, and we had a beautiful day. And I hope you enjoyed your Thanksgiving holiday with your family also. Now we got Christmas coming up. And the older I get, the quicker they come. I don't know if you've noticed that or not, but it just seems like the years are passing so fast that the clocks can't hardly keep up with it. It's amazing. Last week we were studying from John chapter 10. And Jesus was pretty much focused on what he knew was inevitable, but it was now getting closer and closer. And when we talk about the passing of time, I don't know what he must have felt as he reflected upon his purpose for being on this earth, and how quickly time had passed for him to experience what he had experienced as a child, and then as a young man, and then as an adult, and knowing full well that he was about to experience what thousands, if not millions of people had experienced in life, and that is facing death. The thing that separates his death from all the millions that had died before is that his death was a purchase. His death was the buying of our sins, taking them away. And he had to live the perfect life in order to pay that price. And those days were getting shorter now. And so as we finish up chapter 10 and into chapter 11, we talked last week about the fact that they were trying to kill him. They had picked up stones, had him in their hand. They were trying to find him so they could stone him, and he escaped their grasp. And because of the focus that they had on taking Christ out of the picture, trying to keep him from causing such a disturbance in the community and in the nation, from both Galilee and Judea, they wanted to quiet him because he was getting such a following that it was bringing attention of the Roman Empire onto the Jewish community, which over the history had been a thorn in the side of the Romans. And they couldn't stand that. Excuse me, man alive. And so they wanted to get him out. They wanted to get rid of him. And so he, and this was in the latter part of the year, in like a little after December, because he had just gone to the Feast of Dedication, which occurred in December time frame. And so he took in verse 39 of chapter 10, well, let's use 37. It says, I do the works of my Father if I do the works of my Father. I'm going to get it right. If you just stay with me, I'll get it right here in a minute. But if I do not do the works of my Father, don't believe me. But if I do them, though you do not believe me, believe the works, so that you may know and understand that the Father is in me and I in the Father. Therefore, they were seeking again to seize him. The logic that Christ uses is hard to deny. I mean, he had already raised two people from the dead when this Jairus' daughter and the widow Nain. How do you deny that? How if you see it with your own eyes, how can you deny the fact that the Father is not in him, that the God Almighty is not with him, that the prophets who did the wondrous works was an evidence of the fact that God was with them. The things that they spoke were true because it came from God, because they were men who could perform miracles by the power of God invested in them. So what they had to say was credible. Jesus has raised two from the dead, and I think there's 34 miracles in the New Testament that are attributed to Christ. And they were not all recorded by a long shot. John said if they were all recorded, there wouldn't be enough books to hold it. Well, we've got a list of 34. Now here we sit in 2024. We did not see any of those miracles. We read about them, and we read about them from men who had seen them, but we didn't see them. So what makes you believe? Where's the evidence? Where's the logic in your mind? Where is the logic of saying Jesus Christ is the Son of God? There's a lot of things written. There's a lot of things written in the history books. Do you believe them all? I don't. I don't believe everything I read. Why do we believe that this is true? What makes you believe that? You didn't see any miracles. You can't believe everything you read. So where are you in your walk of faith? What makes you believe?
There's nothing that even remotely resembles the context of what's said in the Bible. It is so full of knowledge and so full of accuracy and how they are relative to each other, the verses from one covenant to the next.
Over 1,000 years of history.
It's just, there's nothing, there's men can write good books, but there's nothing that even touches the knowledge that's contained in it. And he told us that he wrote it, so I believe it.
Yeah. That works for you and me. That works for you and me. Doesn't work for the whole world. Should it? Yeah. Yeah, it should. One of the things that has brought me to faith is not so much what I was, I'm going to say that with some reservation. What brought me to faith was not what men told me, but from documents that were written and recorded and verified by archaeologists and scholars like the Dead Sea Scrolls, for example. I believe they found them. I haven't seen them. I haven't read them. I don't know. I know what they say that the Dead Sea Scrolls say, and the Dead Sea Scrolls agree with what had been written back when the Septuagint version was translated some 200 years before from the Hebrew into the Greek. It all agreed. It all tied. All the things that we read relative to the creation of the world tells me there's a God. How can you deny it? Life, where did it come from? It's here, we know it. How did it come from? Can man create it? Nope, can't do it. They got this stuff out now called AI, artificial intelligence, which gathers up all kinds of data and is able to process it in just fractions of a second, which would take us years to pull it all together. It all this data coming in, and it can process it so fast that it's such a broad spectrum of information out there, and people are getting so enthralled about what it can do, and it has. They've done some marvelous things with it. But at the end of the day, with all that information coming together, it can tell you how an atom functions as best the information's out there. It can tell you how it functions, tell you the integral parts of an atom, can tell you things about the universe that have been researched. They can put it all together, and you can see it. But there's not one thing that all the information in the world can do that creates life. I don't care how smart you are. Don't know how smart this artificial intelligence is. You can put all the atoms together you want to in any order you want to in any time frame you want to, but you cannot make it live. There's something about life that man can't do. And I call that the power of God. The ability to take nothing and make something and make life. And it's recorded in the Genesis. It's recorded in the Genesis. And man became a living being. That's the if you literally translate the Hebrew into English, that's what it actually says. King James calls it soul, but the actual translation is man became a living being. Nobody's ever duplicated that. Jesus takes a man who lived and who died and made him a living being again. That's the work of God. That's the work of God. It's not the work of man. Well, they're trying to kill him here in this latter part of 10. Well, even earlier, but they said that the time's come. We've got to take this man out because the Romans are going to come along, and if they come along, what's going to happen to the Jewish nation? Caiaphas says we'll get that a little later. Verse 31, I believe it is. Got my glasses on here. Many came to him and were saying, while John performed no signs, yet everything John said about this man was true. This is after Jesus had gone up to up to a safe zone. It was about 18 miles, I believe it was Ephraim, about 18 miles away from Jerusalem. So he was in the area where John the Baptist started out. And it's kind of a remote area. And if people wanted to go hear John or see John, they had to go to the wilderness, to the Jordan River area where John was baptizing. Jesus took refuge in that place. And verse 40, and he went away again beyond the Jordan to a place where John was first baptizing, and he was staying there. And many came to him and were saying, well, John performed no sign, but everything John said about this man is true, and many have believed in him. Chapter 11. One of the best known chapters in the Bible. Only recorded by John. So I find that's interesting to me. I don't know why the other apostles didn't do it. I read some commentaries on it that suggested that the other apostles were trying to protect Jesus and Mary and Martha and Lazarus from a deluge of notoriety for their own protection. Maybe, I don't know. Actually, there's four miracles that Jesus performed that's only recorded by John. So he covered some areas that were not necessarily covered by the other apostles. This chapter is one of them. When Jesus came to Bethany, which, by the way, the word Bethany in Hebrew means the house of figs. But it can also be interpreted as the house of sorrow. It's interesting that you can use the same word and put it in context. It can mean one thing, put it in another context, it means something else. But by the way, that's in the same area. When Jesus left Bethany and was going back to Bethany on one occasion, there was a fig tree there. You remember the fig tree that he was hungry? It says, the Bible says that he was hungry. And he went up to the fig tree and it had the leaves and everything. There wasn't any figs. Remember what he did? He cursed the tree. He cursed the tree. And the tree withered as they watched, because it withered so fast the disciples said, wow, you don't want to get cursed by God. You don't want to be cursed by Jesus. What was the lesson in there? What was the lesson there? Some have said it's because if you're not fruitful as a person, if you're not fruitful and do what you're supposed to do, like in that tree, you're supposed to put on figs, season was right for it, then you're going to be withered away. You're going to be withered away. So now Jesus is going back into Bethany. Can you imagine the emotions? Jesus coming into Bethany. Now, a certain man was sick. Now, it didn't say a certain man was dead. It said a certain man was sick. Okay? Lazarus of Bethany, the village of Mary and his sister Martha. Bethany is about, by the way, about 2 miles out of Jerusalem. It's not far, very close. Less than a day's journey. That's kind of important later. It was the Mary who had anointed the Lord with ointment and wiped his feet with her hair, whose brother Lazarus was sick. Now, the meaning of Lazarus in Hebrew is God has helped. That's the literal translation of the word Lazarus. Every name, by the way, every name in the Bible, a Jewish name in the Bible, has a meaning. You take my name, Dennis. If it has any meaning, I have no idea what it is. It's just an identification. It's letters put together, and you sound it, and that's my name, Dennis. Lazarus literally means God has helped. So the sisters, they sent word to him saying, Lord, behold, he whom you love is sick. Well, I got a call the other day that my granddaughter was sick. She'll get better. I mean, we all get sick. We get better. So, and Jesus heard this, he said, this sickness is not to end in death, but for the glory of God, so that the Son of Man may be glorified by it. Now, that's an interesting way of looking at that. It won't end in death. Jesus knew exactly what he was saying. It was true. You read the rest of it, yeah. It ended in him living. He was going to pass away. He was sick, but he says it's not going to end in death, so that the Son of God might be glorified. Now, how is it that Christ would say God will be glorified because the man got sick, unless he knew what was going to happen? But the disciples heard it, and they said, well, if he's sick, he'll get better. That's what happens when you get sick. You get better. So when they heard that he was sick, he stayed 2 days longer in the place where he was. Then after this, he said to his disciples, let's go to Judea again. Oh, the disciples said, Rabbi, the Jews were just now seeking to stone you, and are you going there again? Seems like a logical question. Jesus says, are there not 12 hours in a day? If anyone walks in the day, he does not stumble, but if he sees the light of the world. But if anyone walks at night, he stumbles because the light's not in him. Not sure I understand exactly why he said that and how he said that, but the disciples heard it, and they didn't quite get it either. But I guess Jesus was simply saying, if I stay here, and the glory of God's not going to be shown. If I stay here and hide, Lazarus is going to die, and he's going to be dead. Yeah, I mean that's about as close as I can get to understanding that. And then he said after that, our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I go so that I may awaken him out of the sleep. What kind of sleep is there? You've got to put yourself in the disciples there. You put yourself as a disciple. You're sitting there at the feet of Jesus. And he said, well, Lazarus is sick. And then he says, Lazarus is asleep. I'm going to go wake him up. What? You got alarm clocks for that. He's asleep, he'll wake up. What? Why are you going to go down there to Bethany where they're looking to stone you and you're going to wake him up? They didn't get it. I didn't either. Then he said, our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I go to wake him up out of his sleep. And the disciples said to him, Lord, if he's fallen asleep, he's going to recover. Jesus had spoken about his death, but they thought he was speaking literally sleep. So Jesus said to them plainly, here it is, Lazarus is dead. Lazarus is dead. Let it soak in. Lazarus is dead. What did we just say about life? It's in the hands of God. Life is in the hands of God. There's no life in Lazarus. He's dead. Think about it. How in the world can a person who is dead come back to life? We live 2,000 some odd years from that day, and we still can't do it. Nor will we ever take a man from the grave and put life back in him. Do I believe this story? With all my heart. Because I believe in God. And I believe that God gave life in the beginning, and he's going to give life to the dead. And I'll tell you about 1 Thessalonians chapter 4. Going to go there pretty soon. You're going to see things in your lifetime. Now, think about what I just said. In your lifetime, you're going to see things that you will absolutely marvel at. In your lifetime. I'll show you what I mean in a minute. Jesus says, Lazarus is dead, and I'm glad for your sakes that I was not there, so that you may believe, What? Wait a minute. They've been with Christ for 3 years. They've seen the miracles that he's done. They believed in him as Jesus, the Son of God. They had no doubt in their mind. But he says, I'm glad I wasn't there for your sake, so that you might believe. They evidently didn't know. They didn't know what Jesus was about to do. Therefore, Thomas said, okay, guys, let's go also. We'll die with him. It's like a fait accompli. Come on, guys, gather up. We're going with him. We'll die with him. I wished if I had been there, I would have had that kind of courage to say, I'll go with you. I'll go with you. And so we're here today, and sometimes God asks us to do things, and we just kind of say, yeah, okay. But would you say, okay, I'll go with you, even though we're going to die with you. Well, that's what I read out of here. Let's go. We may die with him. So when Jesus came, he found that he had already been in the tomb for 4 days. 4 days. 4 days, dead. Now, Bethany was near Jerusalem. Yeah, about 2 miles off. Many of the Jews had come to Mary and Martha to console them concerning the brother. And Martha said, when she heard Jesus was coming, she went to meet him. Mary stayed in the house. Now, Mary's the one that had put the precious ointments on Jesus and wiped his feet with her hair. And she wouldn't come out. She just stayed in the house. But Martha, the one who did all the cooking, remember? Martha? She said, Lord, if you'd have been here, he wouldn't have died. Even now I know that whatever you ask of God, he'll give you. Now there's a woman that has some faith. You know what I'm saying? I know that whatever you ask of God, God will give you. Jesus said, oh, your brother's going to rise again. Martha said, I know he'll rise again at the resurrection on the last day. Jesus said, I am the resurrection and the life, and he who believes in me will live even if he dies. Let me read that again. I am the resurrection, and I am the life. And he who believes in me will never die. Do you believe this? He who believes in me will live even if he dies. He who believes in me. Well, that's us. He who believed, he wasn't saying Lazarus believed in me, you believe in me. He said, he who believes in me will never die. He'll live, even if he dies. And everyone whose lives who believe in me will never die. Do you believe this? Yes, Lord. I believe you are the Christ, the Son of God, even he who comes into the world. Look, verse 32. Therefore, when Mary came where Jesus was, she ran from the house. Martha went back and told her. She saw him and fell at his feet. Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. When Jesus therefore saw her weeping, and the Jews came with her weeping, he was deeply moved in the spirit and was troubled and said, where have you laid him? And they said, Lord, come and see. And Jesus wept. Why? Why did Jesus weep? He knew what he was about to do. He knew exactly what was about to happen. Lazarus was going to come out of the tomb. He was going to come out of the grave.
Don't you think he wept at the sorrow that his Lazarus' sister was going through?
Yeah, I do.
And the fact that he loved him too.
Yeah. The emotions, and again, I keep going back. If you put yourself, you ever remember that show, Walter Cronkite? You Are There. Some of you are old enough to remember that. Most of you too young. But years ago, there was a TV show called You Are There. I remember the way he said it. You are there. You know, Walter Cronkite's voice. Still hear it. And he'd take He'd try to take you as an individual and take you back into history and see an event that took place. You are there. I want you to go back with me and be a witness to this. And everybody's weeping. Everybody's crying. And the emotions that must have swept over Jesus, who knew full well what he was about to do. He knew before he ever left Ephraim what he was going to do when he got to Bethany. He knew it. And the joy that was just beyond their grasp would not be felt until Lazarus came out of that tomb. And so they wept. And Jesus felt the sorrow and the pain and the suffering that they were going through, and he sympathized, I guess is the right word. And I believe he cried because of the emotions that surrounded him. The sadness. What brought about death anyway? What I don't mean what sickness did he have. I mean, what brought about death to mankind? It was a separation from God, who gave life. The only one who can give life. And so when you're separated from God, then you're dead. Spiritually and physically. That's what God told Adam in there. Surely you're going to die. You do that. You're going to die. And he did. He's not around anymore. He died. Took him about 800 years, but he died. Lazarus died. A lot of people died, and Jesus didn't bring them back. What made them think he was going to bring Lazarus back? Could he do it? Martha said, yeah, I believe you're the Son of God. You ask him, he'll do it. Where'd you lay him? And they took him. They took him over to the cave where they had buried him. Verse 38, so Jesus again began to be deeply moved within. And he came to the tomb. That's the cave. It was a cave with a stone laying around it, over the opening. Jesus said, remove the stone. And Martha said, Lord, listen. He's been dead 4 days. And it's not going to smell good. What's she saying? He's dead. Did I not tell you that if you believe, you'll see the glory of God? I want to go back here. 1 Thessalonians chapter 4. Now I want to tell you, to me, when I read about this story in Lazarus, and I try to put myself there, and I'm listening to the words of God, and I know from this side of the tomb what's going to happen. I know that. It was a great day for Martha. It was a great day for Martha and Mary. It was a great day for Lazarus. It was a great day for everybody who was there to see a dead man come out of the tomb. It was amazing. Absolutely amazing. What if you had been there? Well, I'm going to tell you something. In your lifetime, you're going to see the same thing. Hey, Dennis, you're crazy. No, I'm not. I want to read something. The Lord himself would descend from heaven with a shout, with the voice of the archangel, and with the trumpet of God. And the dead in Christ will rise first. Let me read that again. The dead in Christ will rise first. Mary said, I know Lazarus is going to rise in the last. He said, I am the resurrection and the life. I want to tell you something. You're going to rise from the grave. You think this was a big deal, Lazarus coming out of the tomb? You wait until the trumpet sounds. You're going to see things that you would not believe, that I cannot even conceive of. The sea giving up the dead, the graves being opened, dust flying everywhere, souls coming out of the grave. Yes, one bell, good. 2 bells, 1 bell. Think about it. You're going to see it. And I said it in your lifetime, because you will be alive when that happens. And you'll see it. And you'll marvel. And there'll be no doubt in your mind that Jesus Christ was the Son of God and He keeps His word. And then those who remain alive, could be us who are still alive, but we're going to rise. We're going to rise just like Lazarus. You're going to come out of the tomb. You're going to come out of the grave. Then those who are alive will will be caught up together in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air. And there won't be any parachutes. And you will be with the Lord in the air. And so shall we always be with the Lord. Therefore, comfort one another with these words. And that is exactly what's happening right here. Jesus telling her, and you could be comforted. Be comforted. Be comforted. I am the resurrection and the life. You're going to see it. I believe with all my heart. Just like Martha said, I believe it. There's that bell. I'm done. Thank you.